Welcome to Next in Tech, an S&P Global podcast where the world of emerging tech lives. I'm your host, Eric Hanselman, Chief Analyst for Industry Research at S&P Global. And today we have the first of our CEO series on quantum computing. We're going to explore quantum designs and their capabilities. With me to discuss it is Alan Baratz, CEO of D-Wave, the practical computing company. Alan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on. There's been so much that's been going on in the quantum realm, especially of late. Maybe I'll start with a story. I was at Mobile World Congress in March this year, and normally in the conference floor at the stands there, you've got all sorts of things people are using to jazz up their displays and attract people. Normally, there are a whole bunch of Formula One racers with their teams. They're all kitted out. This year, there were more quantum computers on stands that I saw than there were F1 racers, which, if that's not an indication about how the moment that quantum seems to be having right now, there is a focus that quantum is here, it is real. Granted, what people were displaying in their stands were what we've come to see, I think, maybe as the face of quantum, the superconducting, the chandelier, the gold-plated array that is so stunning. But there's a lot that's going on in quantum beyond that glitzy view. And I guess maybe to start off, can you give us a little bit of a background just in terms of how we ought to be thinking about the different types of quantum and where they fit, and just in terms of quantum designs? What's out there today?
Sure, happy to do it. There are a lot of different technologies that are being used to build quantum computers. Everything from superconducting to trapped ion to neutral atoms to photonics to spin qubits. And each of these technologies have different advantages and disadvantages when it comes to building quantum computers. But at a higher level, there are two main architectural approaches to building quantum computers. One is called annealing, and the other is called gate. And what's interesting about these two architectural approaches is that they are each good at solving different classes of problems. So annealing quantum computers are very good at solving business optimization problems, things like workforce scheduling or manufacturing plant floor optimization or autonomous vehicle routing. But annealing quantum computers are not very good at quantum chemistry or drug discovery or designing new materials. Gate model systems, on the other hand, are very good at quantum chemistry and materials design, but they are not very good at solving business optimization problems. And so as a result, both of these approaches to quantum computing are important in the marketplace. D-Wave is a unique company in this space in the sense that we're actually the only dual platform quantum computing company. And what I mean by that is that we're the only quantum computing company that is developing and bringing to market both annealing and gate model systems to be essentially the one-stop shop for quantum so that we can solve whatever hard computational problem you have. If you need annealing, we've got it. If you need gate model, we've got it.
And that's actually the result of a recent acquisition, right?
It absolutely is. So D-Wave has always been the leader in annealing quantum computing. That's where we started. Our annealing quantum computers are in their sixth generation. These are the largest and most powerful quantum computers in the world. They're the only quantum computers on which true quantum supremacy has been demonstrated. Specifically, we can compute properties of magnetic materials in minutes that would take millions of years to compute on the fastest supercomputers. And they're the only commercial quantum computers today actually being used by customers as part of their business operations. However, we have not been at the forefront when it comes to gate model quantum computing. But at the beginning of this year, we announced the acquisition of Quantum Circuits. This was a spin-out from Yale University that has developed some revolutionary gate model quantum computing technology that basically has catapulted us to the forefront of gate model quantum computing as well. So now we believe that we are world leaders in both annealing and gate model quantum computing.
Well, to that end, what are some of the problems that quantum computing is addressing today? You talked about optimization problems. I guess a lot of times in our conversations with clients, people talk about quantum as this far distant future, but there's a lot that's going on in terms of problems that are being solved very effectively today. You're talking about the functionality that exists getting towards quantum supremacy. That's here and now, right?
So again, this goes back to whether we're talking about annealing or gate. If we're talking about gate model, those systems are not yet commercially viable. They're still very much in the R&D phase, and there are still some very challenging problems that need to be addressed before we will see gate model quantum computers large enough and powerful enough to solve real world problems. However, in the annealing space, we are there today. As I said, we've demonstrated quantum supremacy. We're the only company in the world that's demonstrated quantum supremacy on a useful real world problem. And we have customers that are using us as a part of their business operations. For example, we have one of the world's largest airlines. We have one of the world's largest healthcare companies. We have one of the world's largest aerospace companies. We have one of the world's largest mobile carriers. We basically have a number of very significant companies that are leveraging us for a variety of different types of applications. Let's talk about a chemical company. This is BASF, one of the largest chemical companies in the world. So one of the problems that they were grappling with was how to efficiently fill orders. So they get orders for different chemicals. They've got a production facility that fulfills those orders by mixing different components together to create the chemicals to fulfill the orders. What they found is that by using our quantum computer, they can reduce the time to compute the scheduling for fulfilling those orders from what was taking them 10 hours to compute the schedule down to just seconds to compute the schedule. Now, why is this so important? The reason why this is so important is because things happen. A supply truck might be late, and the production schedule that they had computed might need to be modified. Well, if it takes 10 hours to recompute the schedule, you're going to have to wing it. Whereas if it takes seconds, you can immediately recompute the schedule. Another example, we've been doing some work with Anduril and Davidson Technologies, two government contractors. We basically did work on missile defense, very timely application area. So essentially what we did was we demonstrated that on a 500 incoming missile simulation, we can compute the solution to neutralize that incoming threat in 1/10 the time, a factor of 10 improvement in the time to compute the solution. Obviously, when you're trying to take out incoming threats, time matters.
Time does indeed matter.
And our solutions were able to take out 10% more threats. So on the order of 50 more threats were able to be taken out with the solution being computed in 1/10 the time. Here are just a couple of examples. Maybe I'll just give you one more. We are also the only company with a quantum computer that's been able to essentially address large language model training in a real commercial application area. So this is work we did with Shionogi, a drug company in Japan. And essentially, they had developed a large language model for generating new molecular structures for human drugs. They then retrained that model using our quantum computer. And what they found was that the molecular structures that were being generated were far more well suited to human drugs. So they basically got more accurate models that they were able to train faster with lower power consumption. And of course, power consumption is a really important issue when it comes to AI and model training.
Well, we're just the other side of our CERAWeek conference, where one of the main topics was how much energy AI is consuming. I'm curious for each of these examples. So if you think about the first with BASF, it seems like that's something that classical computers could reasonably tackle. What was the difference in a quantum approach that really yielded those results? Is it that there were so many variables? I'm curious about what was it that really was the key to the quantum approach to cracking it much more quickly?
Yeah. What most people don't actually recognize is that most of the problems that businesses need to solve, the computational problems that businesses need to solve, are what we call exponentially hard problems. So what this means is that the time to compute the optimal solution grows exponentially in the size of the problem. So when you get to even medium-sized problems, let alone large problems that businesses need to deal with, that's outside of the reach of classical computers to compute the optimal solution. They can't do it. There's not enough time. There's not enough time in the universe, right? Or in your lifetime. However, what they end up doing is developing heuristics, simplifications to the problem that allow them to get solutions that they hope are good enough. And that's pretty much how the world works today. It runs on heuristics, where you simplify the problem and hope that you're getting good enough solutions. Well, quantum computing is so much faster and so much more powerful that in typically an even shorter period of time, we're able to compute much better, if not optimal solutions. So it's not that these companies weren't computing solutions before. BASF was computing solutions, and they were probably good enough solutions for what they needed. But with our quantum computer, we're able to get them even better solutions much faster.
So being able to not only the trick is not shortening the time, but actually being able to solve the complete question in terms of how that actually gets put together.
It's a combination. It is better solutions faster. We want to tackle the whole problem, not a simplification of the problem, to allow for better solutions, and we want to compute those better solutions much faster.
So in terms of tackling quantum problems, how should we really be evaluating quantum capabilities? I mean, right now, there are a lot of discussions about qubit count, and especially in gate-level computers, those are the kinds of things that we talk about, this transition between real and logical qubits, stability, all the rest of it. But across the whole spectrum of capabilities for quantum, we don't have a really solid set of ways to understand what those differences are. How should enterprises really be looking at how they classify the capabilities of there and find suitability and assess the options that are available?
Okay, so let's start with how you should be thinking about a provider of quantum computing. This business about number of qubits or coherence time or quantum volume or any other kind of measure that excites physicists is of no value to businesses, right? You need to raise it up at least 10 levels, right? So I'm going to give you 3 criteria for evaluating a provider of quantum computing. 1, have their quantum computers solved any problem at all, better than it can be solved classically? Now, I think what you'll find is, other than D-Wave, no quantum computer has been able to solve a problem better than classical. You'll sometimes hear, we did as well as classical. You'll sometimes hear, well, on a small version of the problem, we were able to solve it better than our laptop, right? But the only company that's actually been able to solve a problem better than classical, better than the most powerful classical computers, is D-Wave. But that should be your first question. Have you been able to solve any problem better than classical? Because if you haven't been able to solve any problem better than classical, don't waste your money on their quantum computer, right? 2, does the quantum computer have the reliability and the availability that you need to be able to count on it if you're going to use it as a part of your business operations? Our quantum systems are highly reliable. In fact, so reliable that we offer service level agreements. We're the only quantum computing company that has systems that are reliable enough to be able to do that. So we offer our customers service level agreements. And finally, are there referenceable customers? Are there customers that will stand up and say, yeah, we've used this, it works, we're getting good results? So 3 simple questions. Has your quantum computer solved any problem better than classical? Does it have the reliability that I'm going to need to be able to count on it as part of my business operations? And do you have any referenceable customers? That's how you should be thinking about a provider of quantum computing, right? To be fair, most quantum computing companies really are still in the R&D phase. You can use their systems for research experimentation, but you cannot count on them as a part of your business operations. Our quantum computers have achieved that level of commercial viability.
Makes sense. Pretty simple in terms of how you shake it out. I'm curious, in terms of solving some of these problems, what are really the limiting factors that exist in quantum today? And what are the kind of problems that you're trying to overcome?
So, again, we need to separate between annealing and gate. Okay? On the annealing side, we're at the point today where we can solve fairly large commercial problems. But there are problems that are still larger than what we can solve on our systems today. For example, today, and I'm going to give you a metric which initially won't seem relevant, but I'll give you some context for it. Today, we can solve problems with up to 2 million variables. You might say, oh, 2 million, that kind of sounds like a lot, so you should be able to solve most problems. But if we wanted to solve the last mile routing problem for FedEx or for UPS, it would require 50 million variables. So we still have a ways to go. As a result, with each generation of our annealing quantum computer, we're always focused on more qubits and more connectivity, because that's what allows us to address more variables, to solve larger and more complex problems. We're also focused on longer coherence time, because coherence time, that's the time that the qubits remain in the quantum state, allows us to solve the problems faster. So more qubits, more connectivity, longer coherence time. With each generation of our quantum computer, we're advancing in each of those areas. Okay? Today, we're on our 6th generation quantum computer, which has 4,500 qubits. Our next generation quantum computer is targeted to have 100,000 qubits. You might say, what, 4,000 to 100,000 in one product cycle? How are you planning to do that? And the answer is, we're moving to a multi-chip solution. Up until now, it's always been about more qubits on a chip. With our next generation system, we will be interconnecting the processor chips. It'll be a multi-chip solution. So if you think about it, if we've got 4,000 or 4,500 qubits on a chip today, 25 chips gets us 100,000 qubits, and that's not that big a reach for us to be able to deliver. So that's our next generation.
That's way out of Moore's Law territory, which you probably figured out.
It's pretty exciting. Now,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, all I was going to say was on the gate model side, as I said, we really are still in the research experimentation phase. What's needed there, first and foremost, error correction. Gate model systems are very sensitive to noise and errors. In fact, even after a small number of computations, 20, 30, 50, 100, the errors are so great that the computation collapses. So before we get to full error correction, it's unlikely that these systems will be able to solve commercial problems at scale. So first and foremost, on the gate model side, we need error correction. And we're working aggressively on that, as well as are all the other gate model system providers. And then you need to scale. Once you have error correction, you need to scale to enough qubits to actually be able to solve these large problems. So that's the focus for gate model. Error correct, and then scale. At D-Wave, through the quantum circuits acquisition, we have some very transformative qubit technology that we believe will allow us to correct errors much more efficiently than other approaches. And through some control technology that we developed for annealing quantum computers, we believe that we'll be able to very efficiently control these qubits, making it possible for us to scale them to large sizes more rapidly than others may be able to scale their gate model systems.
Impressive. When you start looking at the multi-chip versions of the annealing system, are you still wrestling with a lot of the communications issues? It seems chip to chip then starts to become a bigger challenge in terms of how you actually start to manage the intercommunication between devices.
Yeah, no. And for the following reason, the way we're interconnecting these processor chips is through superconducting bonds. So it's not as though we have different chips, different processors geographically distributed, and we need networking between them. These are superconducting bonds that interconnect the chip. And so it essentially just extends the compute fabric.
Oh, well, that's kind of scaling is truly impressive.
It's very exciting technology.
In terms of what enterprises should be thinking about as they head on their journey, I mean, as I was mentioning, we spend a lot of time talking with clients, helping them to understand this directionality and the urgency for being able to really understand what can be done with quantum and how they integrate it into their business operations. I'm curious what your take is on what enterprises should be looking at, what their early stage steps should be, and really how they should get their arms around and understanding about what quantum can do for them and how they should be making these steps, which seem to be all the more critical as we look at the advances in maturity of quantum computing capabilities.
So if you're not thinking about how to leverage quantum computing today, you're late. As I said, we've got some very large Global 2000 companies, Fortune 100 companies that are using our technologies today. So if you're not thinking about it, you are late. So how should you be thinking about it? First of all, look at your hard computational problems that are sort of integral to your business operations, where if you could compute better solutions, you might be able to operate much more efficiently or reduce costs. So it starts with your hard computational problems that basically have a significant impact on your business operations. And again, this could be anything from workforce scheduling to logistics management to manufacturing optimization. But that's the starting point. Then what you're looking for is how good are the solutions that you're getting to those problems today? Do you think that there's room to improve? And if so, what are the stumbling blocks to improving? If the answer is compute power, then start looking at quantum computing. So hard computational problems that have a significant impact on your business operations, where you believe that you're not getting the best possible solutions to those problems, and the reason is because you're compute bottlenecked, take a look at quantum computing.
Well, makes sense. It's one of those things that, as I said, we keep trying to push people forward, especially when we start thinking about some of the advances that are taking place and some of the opportunities that exist. There are so many other questions that I'd like to dig into, but unfortunately, we are at time for this episode. Alan, I appreciate all your insights. This has been great.
Eric, it was a pleasure talking to you, and let's do it again sometime.
By all means. That is it for this episode of Next in Tech. Thanks to our audience for staying with us. And thanks to our production team, including Sophie Carr, Faran Miadayashin, and Kira Smith on the marketing and events teams. If you like this episode, please subscribe or like us. Please keep in mind that statements made by persons who are not S&P Global employees are their own views and not necessarily the views of S&P Global. I hope you'll join us for our next episode, because there is always something next in tech.